Welcome back to the Disrupt Education podcast. Alli, Privitt. Hey, I'm Peter Hostrawser, but Alli, how are you doing?
I am well on this at the time of this recording, summer morning. We're in what I call the sunshine season. And it's the longest, days of the year. Well, it'll still be summer when this comes out,
Yeah.
maybe late summer, but I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but right, I'm from Minnesota. I live above the 45th parallel, and that means that in the summertime we get a lot of sunshine, even more than in Chicago and that. And it's interesting because I lived in St. Louis, Missouri for a long time, but going back to the north, and that it's still light out almost at 10 o'clock at night. It's incredible. You don't even realize like how rejuvenating that is. So whenever this comes out, I hope it's sunny, and two, go outside, be in the sunshine. These 6 months of the year are the absolute best.
Or just go up to Iceland, You can
It's amazing. I've been there.
Oh, see, that's on my list.
Yeah.
That's totally on my list.
Do it.
Let's go. I'm excited about this podcast. Very excited. This is a previous guest. We have Malcolm Crawford with us today. Hi, Malcolm.
Hello.
How you doing,
guys
buddy?
doing? What's up?
It has been, I would say, first season. As a matter of fact, when you were on before, this wasn't even a podcast. This was still just straight up YouTube channel. Early on, I would say in I think it was 50 or 52 or somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was early.
Oh my gosh. Well, welcome back. This is one of the things I absolutely love about being an educator with all this technology and this access is to watch previous students and then become a student of them. Right. So to me, that's amazing. You were we'll go back into that podcast, but give everybody a quick introduction of who you are and what you're all about these days.
Okay, my name is Malcolm Crawford. I am a content creator. I do a lot of podcasting and I make a lot of anime content on TikTok. It's awesome. Like the content creation game has been very fun for me. I had a blast doing it, and my podcast has always been at the forefront of that with my two co-hosts, my best friend since 4th grade, and my youngest brother. So it's been a really cool journey. Things are looking up, and I am enjoying it a lot.
So I'm gonna jump in. First off, so if you go back, and I'm going to put this link in the notes to our last podcast years ago, right? Yes, you are older and you have cooler cameras and headphones now and such. So last time we talked, you were going into the sophomore year of your post-secondary opportunities. You were at the moment leaving Triton College, which is our local community college here around Chicago. And you were leaving SIU, going to Triton College. Sorry about that. And then planning on getting 1 year there and then going to UIC, which is University of Illinois in Chicago. And I believe there was a business degree somewhere in there that you were talking about. What happened, Malcolm? Tell me, man. Tell us your journey.
Okay, so that was the game plan. However, that wasn't all the way my game plan, if that makes sense, So yes, that is what I was doing, and that's what I wanted to do to an extent, but more so just to kind of appease the other people in my life, because I have never been super keen on school. That's never really been my thing, and I absolutely hated SIU. That was not for me at all. Like that was one of the worst experiences of my life. And then I was going to Triton, and the game plan was to go to Triton and then go to UIC. After 1 year at Triton, I needed to go back for another year at Triton. I already didn't want to go. And I asked one of my friends when the registration date was because I was procrastinating because I didn't want to do it. He told me the date, but he accidentally told me the wrong date. So I missed registration, which was awesome because I didn't want to go anyway. And I was like, oh, well, like I missed registration. There's nothing I could do. And then from that point on, I just put my full focus into just doing what I could do on my podcast and spending all my extra time there. I already had a job, so I was working my job and doing the podcast simultaneously. And it ended up being much better for me in the long run.
That there's so many questions one could ask there with the journey. So I want to the part that you said where you were like, it wasn't my journey. I can resonate with that. And I'm certain a lot of our listeners can resonate with that. As being a young person, you feel a lot of pressure from people who've been in your life, and whether or not you know it, what you've been told, by society, or like measures of success that kind of get amplified more than other routes, right? Go to college, get a job, live a traditional life is pretty standard. No one here would be shocked and odd if I said, you should do that. And I know that I've had to let go of, even when I was in college, I was to go to college and play volleyball and got a scholarship to play volleyball in college. And I then didn't do that, right? Like right. A lot of friends, and particularly my parents, were not happy with that choice. Because they felt like they had invested so much in that journey. So I'm curious, when you said like, I didn't really enjoy school, and then you disliked your college experience. Was there a sense, or when was there a sense that you had a different path? And like, how was that process of releasing, people's expectations, to then go in your route? How did that kind of like, walk us through a little bit about like your journey there?
It was difficult in that sense of not doing that, because when I wasn't going to school anymore, all of the people around me were very supportive of that. But to an extent, you can still kind of feel the aspect of like, I support you in your decision, but like, I do kind of wish that you would have gone to school, And it's like, okay, so I always did feel supported. And while nobody like obviously said it to me, you just kind of know from expectations, especially of knowing these people for a long time. Like, obviously my mother, I've known her for forever. My girlfriend, who at that time we had been dating probably like 3 years. We've been together like 7 now. My girlfriend's parents, and everybody's always super supportive, but I can feel the asterisks of, yes, I'm glad you're doing this because it's making you happy, but like, I hope this actually ends up making you happy in the long run. And once I was kind of able to just realize that I am unhappy doing that, I have to do this way, or I am not going to be able to enjoy the later points in my life. Like, I could make them happy right here and get that short-term happiness, or I could go through the hard parts and get that long-term happiness in the long run, because it was tough. Like, it was very, very tough. I went through a stage of depression during that time, because it's not easy going off of the path that you've been told to go down your whole life. Like, that's just what classic America's school systems teach you, is go to school, go to college, get a job, marriage, this, and that. So when you don't do that, it's like, wow, I feel like I am on a divergent path on my own. Like, it's really tough, but I'm glad that I went down that path now, but it's definitely a hard decision to make.
Yeah, that path is kind of where I want to keep going. It is the first one to kind of break through things and do things differently, no matter who you are and where you are in your life, you're going to hit the wall, and then you have to figure out how to go through that wall. And then you got to hit another one and hit another one. I feel like in standardized academic life, those walls are expected, where they're coming from, you have a lot of different sort of standardized support there. But when you're an entrepreneur and going off on your own, the beliefs, especially of people close to you, start to wane, right? Especially when you hit those walls. And so I wanted to ask you kind of a two-part question. I mean, the first question was, what did you learn from the time, because you were the storm, you had that podcast going. It was, when I saw it, I was like, okay, it looks like he's experimenting. He's got like some different, and you were kind of all over. I don't think you were all in on anime. You were talking about creating some music events and working with musicians and stuff, which you may still do. So talk about what you've learned in that, hitting those walls, not only about yourself, but about the industry that you're in. And then secondly, when was the time when, or maybe it hasn't happened yet, when those close to you, family members or whatever, are like, okay, this is it. I'm just going to preface that with a guy named Isaac Palmer, who's an amazing young DJ, and his dad and his parents were kind of like questioning here and there every once in a while. And it was when he started to make money, right? So we'll go back into, okay, hitting those walls. What did you learn from, and, from maybe pivoting? And then, when did people start believing in you?
There was definitely a lot of learning that went into it. And luckily, I honestly cannot say how grateful I am for my team that has been able to power through those walls with me. Because my team right now is not the same team that I started with, except for one of my co-hosts. His name is Chris. He goes by C2. And he's been with me the whole time. But we've had team members come and go, and they haven't gone just because of the issues of, trying to learn, but also just because life gets in the way, people have jobs, people have girlfriends, people have school. So sometimes things just don't work out. But when it comes to those walls, you really just have to try to take everything in and analyze what you have. Because when you hit the walls, it's when you hit the same wall for the second time and you're like, okay, I'm clearly doing something wrong. I need to figure out what's going on. Because for a long time, that's what I believed. It was like, well, just put your head down, keep going. And I was like, okay, wait a minute. I've done this too many times. What is working? What is not working? Let's start molding these things together and figuring out what the actual path is. And once you get that, that's when the quote unquote success started to come. And I think the time when people really started to believe and like understand was kind of when the money started coming in a little bit. It was a long period of time where my mom pays the phone bill, right? And she always asked me for the money for the phone bill. And I just did not have it. Like, I was like, I'm sorry, like, I don't have it. When I was able to pay the phone bill and like, oh yeah, like I think I paid it early. It was like, oh, okay, like, wait, he's actually making money off of this. Things are kind of working a little bit. Same for my girlfriend, when I'm able to actually just contribute more in that sense of, take her out to a nice place or, go do things like that. Obviously, she's happy when we don't have that. But being able to do that is like, oh, this is actually starting to work a little bit. Things are starting to work. And then it's just like, when people walk up to me in public, I think that was like a big thing for my girlfriend when that happened for the first time. It actually happened yesterday too. When people walk up and they're like, hey, like, I know you from TikTok. Hey, can we take a picture or whatever? And it's like, oh, wow, this is actually like a real thing. So when other people in your life can kind of get those tangibles, I think it makes it a lot easier for them to buy in,
There's so many parts of this journey, like entrepreneurial journey, and choosing that we talk so much about on the podcast. And some of our most successful guests have had very non-traditional routes, and success in the terms of, I would say what society says success, like, big businesses and successful careers, but not necessarily done, the traditional route, which is what you have chosen to do. So when I want to go back a little bit to see if you can kind of remember, like, when you were in school, did you hear, some of your peers or anybody kind of encourage, go out and do, run your own business or try to make it your own way? Or, is that something you just were like, I'm going to grind it out? And just thinking about your school journey, like what messages do you remember hearing? And because that's one of the things that we try and get to here on the podcast is like, what can the educational system do to help, people create and build whatever way they want? And so trying to uncover maybe missed opportunities there, or things that maybe would have helped when you were in high school and even in that early college days, when you're going through your journey.
I think one of the things that I heard most from like people close to me was you can do both. So while I was saying like, I don't want to go and do the school, people were like, you should do the school, get a job, work on your stuff in the background. And then when that takes off, you can stop doing the other things. So you always have a safety net. While I do think that is really good advice for a lot of people, wasn't exactly the path that I needed to go down. That's not really what would have worked for me. One, I'm not good at multitasking. I can switch between multiple tasks fast, but I cannot do multiple things at the same time. It just doesn't work well for me. And also, I was just having such a bad time in school. Like, I was just not enjoying it so much. That was literally just holding every other aspect of my life back, because I would leave school and I would just be thinking about, oh my gosh, like I have to go back again in the morning. Like I just would not be able to put my full focus into it. So I mean, I heard a lot of that, and I think that is good advice for most people. But for me, that just wasn't it. And I think it's important to kind of know yourself and be able to know if that is the right decision for you or not. Because a lot of people do both. Even my mom did both. My mom has a degree and she also has a business, and she was able to do both. It's just not for me. Like everybody has their own path to go down, and that one wasn't for me. It wasn't working. I tried it. It wasn't working. I had to do something new.
I like the action verb, do something. Thank you for that. I think that's something that's a challenge actually sometimes with Gen Z. I think it's a challenge with any generation that is a teen. But I shouldn't just say Gen Z. I know I was lazy and didn't really want to act because out of fear or whatever. Going back to those moments of, all right, I know I have to do this for 3-4 more years, and I have to take these classes, excuse me, that I'm not really maybe not interested in, or I don't see the my path attaching to this. I think that's something that I know Alli and I have seen in classrooms a lot. I see it a lot more since, 2008 when the crash happened. And then a lot of millennials got stuck with huge college bills. A lot more questions are coming out on the value of post-secondary education. I don't want to go there, but what I do want to ask you about is, there's a lot of youth now I think there's more than before doing what you are doing, seeing the bigger picture and saying, you know what, I just don't really have it in me or don't want to do this right now, yet they're still kind of frozen in doing something, right? So kind of wanted to ask, going back into when did you start thinking about podcasting? When did you start knowing that, hey, this is something that I'm very interested in that moment that you started to try that? I believe it was in high school or maybe even before. You've always been very interested in anime and in other aspects of music and such. What kind of things did you do on your path to really say, I know I can try this and see what happens? What brought your confidence level to a point where, I'm going to learn through this way, doing something I like to do and act on it? And then what kind of advice would you give somebody who is maybe 15, 16, 17, maybe even a senior or somebody who's just graduated, AKA my son, who may not want to go for 4 years the next time? So, kind of talk about how did you know that, and what got you to act, and what advice would you give a younger person?
So for me specifically, the podcasting itself kind of came on accident. So I've had the Storm brand for a while, and I was working with artists, managing a couple different rappers, and we were throwing shows under the name of the Storm, and I was kind of looking for ways to expand the Storm brand. So podcasting, I was listening to a podcast called the Joe Budden Podcast at the time, and I was like, oh wow, this seems like a good way to keep putting hip-hop content forward and link that to the Storm name. I think that'll be awesome. So I had got some individuals in the hip-hop section together, and I was like, okay, cool. We ended up needing another person. I wasn't even supposed to be on it. Like, it was just supposed to be under the Storm brand, but we needed another person. I was like, well, this has to move forward. So I jumped in on it. And after a couple episodes, I was like, whoa, this is actually like really fun. I'm really enjoying this. Things are going well. So I just stayed on it, and it kept moving. And as time goes on, like, obviously the podcast has pivoted a lot from where it started, and it's really just been pivoting based off of our interests at the time. We were super into the hip hop scene at the time. And then we all watch anime. We were like, why don't we add anime into the podcast? And then that started being cool. And we were just having more and more fun with the anime. It was half hip hop, half anime. The anime time just kept creeping up on the hip hop time. So it was just like less and less of the podcast was hip hop. More and more of it was anime, because it was just more fun for us to talk about. And we were like, all right, well, we're just going to go full anime. And we went full anime, and anime, pop culture, like nerd stuff. And from then, like, that's when the numbers really started boosting, because that's when people were just locked in more on that. Clearly, we were having more fun just doing that, and it just kept moving on from there. So I would say just try a bunch of stuff. Like, I got into podcasting just by trying it. That wasn't even the plan. It wasn't like, I can't wait to make my own podcast and be in front of a mic. It was like, well, we need somebody. I'll do it. Why not? Who better than me? I'll do it. I'll tag in. I did it, and I was like, whoa, this is super fun. Talking with my friends, people are enjoying it. And it was just cool. I'm very glad that I kind of fell into podcasting, but after falling into it, I fell in love with it. And now it's my favorite thing to do.
This idea of trying stuff, and Peter, you kind of getting at this idea of not being frozen. It's very easy to be kind of a consumer. And I like that you call yourself a creator and building something, and creating, putting stuff out into the world. And it can be very challenging as a young person. I've seen it, all the time, to kind of get off of the device from a consume version, and then put yourself out there and create. And I would say your lens, it's so, like, you didn't care, like, it wasn't about like the success of the numbers, and it doesn't seem like it was like, just doing it was successful. You didn't put any kind of marker on it that would measure success. So therefore, if it didn't do X, then you failed. And I think that is something for young people to consider, that, it'd be good if you failed, quote unquote. And that failure leads you to, larger versions of success. Because what I think you're saying in your story, without like wording it this way, is that, like, if you had, when you first started with hip hop, and you felt this kind of, well, I want to talk about something else, but we have to talk about this, or we fail, kind of, you wouldn't have ever pivoted and evolved into kind of where you are now.
Exactly. Yes.
So your agility and your kind of flexibility and just ability to kind of create, even that has kind of grown. So what, like, in your entrepreneurial journey, and with podcasting or with anime or whatever you're doing now, what are some lessons that you feel like you've learned that you would never have gotten in school?
Some of the biggest lessons I think I've learned is that failing is okay and it's helpful. In school, failing is the last thing you want to do. You don't want to fail. If you fail, you have failed. In the entrepreneurship world, if you failed, you learn a lot more from failing than from doing things right. Because when you do stuff right, it is possible to, get that data and like, okay, what went right? What do I do? When you fail, it's a lot easier to see where I need to pivot, because when things are going right, you don't even know that you need to pivot. You're like, oh, well, it's working. Like, I'll just keep doing this. When you fail, it's like, oh, maybe this wasn't working as well as it should have been. Even with the point earlier with moving the anime into the podcast, my co-host, I wish I would have listened to him. My co-host suggested that probably 6 months before we did it. He was like, hey, maybe we should just go full anime. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, that's a cool idea, but there are people who still want to hear the hip hop from us, and it's still kind of cool. I wish I would have been like, yeah, you know what? Let's do it. And from that point, I learned, like, once we pivoted and everything started going better, we started having more fun. The listeners could hear we were having more fun. So then we got more and more listeners. Now I'm like, he gave a suggestion last week and I was like, let's do it. Like, well, let's try it, because you got to be able to learn from those mistakes. I wish I would have listened to him. So I think the failing is like, wow, I made that mistake, but now I know this is what we have to do now. There was a huge setback for us in the podcast with one of our co-hosts. He ended up leaving the podcast, and he gave us a ton of feedback on the leaving, and that changed the entire trajectory of the podcast. So yes, we definitely failed in that aspect. And then it's like, oh, okay, now we know what we did wrong. Yes, we wish we would have been doing this before, but this has helped us so much in the long run. In school, you're not supposed to fail. Like, that's just, you are not supposed to do so. Even in a traditional job, you're not supposed to fail. In traditional life, like, when you fail, bad things happen, and it's like, oh no, like, this is the end of the world. I'm gonna get fired. Nobody can fire me. The listeners might stop listening, but we can always get more listeners and pivot. So I think that failure is just the biggest thing I've learned from that. Like, I kind of get excited a little bit when you see a failure. Like, if I post a TikTok and it's like, oh man, this did terrible. Like, okay, now I know, like, let's learn a little bit from this. If we post an episode and it's like, I'm looking at the data and there's a dip in viewers in this conversation, it's like, okay, what's wrong? It's like, oh, okay, our energy wasn't really here for this conversation. Maybe we weren't excited enough about it. My arms were crossed here. My body language was off. Like, okay, I need to make these changes here. So I think that failure is just the best thing in business. Like, it just helps so much.
When I'm hearing your story, and also going through failure, and talking about how you have failed in your entrepreneurial journey, I hear a lot of reflection. Some is happenstance, right? What if that kid told you the right date at Triton,
Right.
like you go back to these moments, and you're very, like, just from this conversation, you're very, very good at understanding moments in your journey that have made an impact. Even like, I would have never thought of, crossing your arms, like that is something, but you're very, like, yeah, right. You're very, like, reflective on that, and then you act on the reflection. I don't know if that's a learned skill, or if that's something that we can teach or we miss in education. That's going to lead into basically the last kind of big question here is, and I know I've asked you this question back in the day, is it nature? Is it nurture? Like, if you were to build a place, an education system, a school, rebuild Oak Park and River Forest High School, where we work together and learn together, what would that look like now to maybe enhance the fact that failure is okay, reflection is very important? How would you do that differently? Maybe there are parts that are working, that worked for you, reflecting back now, and a little bit more a little later on in your life. But yeah, how would you answer that question? How would you build something either partially or entirely?
I think the main thing that I know I needed in school was more variety. I've always been the type of person that if something is coming easy to me, I'm not very interested. So one of the main reasons I didn't like school is because I had gotten kind of good at it. So it was just kind of boring to me. I was not paying attention in any of my classes. I can tell you in senior year, probably longer than senior year, I did zero homework. I did not do homework because I knew how to get A's on the test. So it's like, I just naturally have a good short-term memory. I just load up my short-term memory the period before, get an A on the test, barely pass. Like that was literally the whole game plan. So I think more variety would have worked very well for me because there could have been an aspect that challenged me, that made it hard for me. My favorite part of high school was track because when I first joined the track team, I was terrible. I was so slow, it wasn't working. And then I worked really hard, became a triple jumper. And I was like, whoa, this is cool. Like the work hard part is cool. And when you don't have to work hard at school, me specifically, it's like, all right, I don't care. This is useless to me. So more variety in giving me options that might have been hard. Maybe having a situation where it's like, okay, this isn't working. Maybe high school should have things similar to internships where you can go try something in the real business world. And it's like, okay, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be a teacher, per se. It's like, okay, well, here's a program where you can go try out being a teacher, seeing what this is like. And that would also help kids fail faster. If I'm like, yo, I really want to be a teacher, a executive, whatever, it's like, okay, I'm going to go try this program. And I'm like, oh, well, this actually is not for me. Instead of going through 4 years to finally get to that point and going, oh, I don't like this at all. It's like, that's terrible. I would much rather have that happen in high school. And it's like, well, I would love to be a chef. Okay, cool. This high school has a program where you can go work in the kitchen and see what it's like to be a chef instead of sitting in a classroom and them telling you what it's like. You're like, oh, it sounds awesome. I would love to be a chef. And then you start cutting onions like, oh, I hate this. This is the worst thing for me. I think that's like one thing that is just missing is giving students the opportunity to try different experiences. When I talk to my friends about high school, we all had very similar experiences. Everybody does. Everybody wake up in the morning, get there at 8, sit in these classes, eat lunch, go to gym, go home. It's the same experience. Everybody has the same thing. Like everyone listening has probably lived through exactly what I just said. Mm-hmm. Now, like if you give them options to have different experiences, now I know new things. I know what I am interested in. I know what I'm not interested in. And just teaching people that it's okay to not be interested in stuff. Me not being interested in school, I felt like a weirdo. Like I'm like, oh, I'm not enjoying this at all. Like the stress that you guys are feeling, I'm not feeling it because I don't care. People would be like, oh, we got a test coming up. Oh my God. Or yes, I just got an A on this. And I would have an A on my paper. I'm like, oh, when's lunch? Like, can I go hit the track now? It just didn't matter at all. So I think that just that variety is just so necessary. So people can just try other stuff. Like just go try things. That is the most important thing in life is just going and trying things. I literally cannot stress enough how important, even with our podcast, we've never done a skit before. All of our content is just, sitting, talking to the camera, doing challenges and stuff like that. I just bought some costumes and stuff like that. And we're going to shoot a skit next week. Yes. And maybe we enjoy it. Maybe we don't. Maybe the listeners enjoy it. Maybe they don't. Who knows? Let's go try it and see what it's like. Maybe it might not even be a podcast anymore. Maybe we all love the skit so much. That's what we're going to go do. I think just trying new stuff and following what interests you, there's a cool intersection of things that interest you and things that work. When you find that intersection, that's where you're supposed to be, and you don't got to stay there. When you find something new that you like, that you're enjoying, move to that. I just think that being stagnant in the one experience is just so outdated that we should just be moving into more variety.
I think you just wrapped it up right there.
I know. Right.
What are your thoughts, Alli, on this? Because I love the fact that we were able to see, before and then currently. I never say after, because that's after everything.
Right. Yeah, there's still a long way to go. And I love that my path has been documented my favorite thing about podcasting, whenever people ask me my favorite thing, the one thing that I think is the coolest, I've been podcasting since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
We have put out one episode every single week for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the journey is fully documented.
Yeah.
When I don't have any kids, but when I do have kids, they can literally go back and be like, hey, what was my dad like at 19? And they have hours, hundreds of hours our podcast is long. We record for 3 to 4 hours every week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, all this content is there. If I ever want to be like, how was I feeling January of 2020? How was I feeling October 2023? I can click and listen in. And that's the coolest part. Like, the whole journey is just there. It's there for consumption.
Amazing foresight.
I mean, even having podcasted for the last year with Peter, right? I do think about, a lot of, there's little nuggets in there of our own journeys and the evolution of the podcast and everything. I mean, Peter's been doing this for like 6-7 years now. So you even have a longer documentation. But for everything you kind of shared, Malcolm, about variety in school and just going and doing stuff, I think that's just the biggest message that anybody listening to this, and it's not just for young people, right? Like this idea of stagnation and just feeling stuck. You don't have to live in that place, and this idea of an intersection of what you like and what works is really, really, really powerful. And you can like something and cannot work. You can find something else that you like that does work, and just going out, trying new things. I know that has been like such a huge shift even in my own career. Like, I really do like teaching. Was it working for me at the time? No. So I left and I'm trying new things. So, and if it is working and you do like it, it's really beautiful. So
right, yeah.
It's just so much that I think our listeners are going to take away from this episode, and we'll definitely have to have you on again to see like where you're at.
I'm 1000% down to come back. Like, I'm so excited to be here right now. Like, I love podcasting. I love Mr. Hostrawser. Like, it's just awesome. Yeah, this is an awesome experience for me.
I think, on a last note, Alli, you hit it there, and all your experiences, Malcolm, are actually, I hope a lot of our listeners, whether you're an educator, whether you're somebody thinking about doing something you're giving a lot of really great advice, in different ways of just doing something. One of the things that I really appreciate is the fact that, like I said before at the beginning of the podcast, is I get to actually, in this day and age, like, my father was a math teacher. He didn't get a chance outside of, seeing people in person, to see how they're growing and what are the things that they're doing. And, because of Instagram, because of TikTok, because of, Facebook, and all these different places, YouTube, I get to see that, and every once in a while I'll just drop a note in there. But I think for those who are creating, I think the hardest thing is because maybe everybody's not interacting with you, but there are people watching and right. Really gaining insight from what you are doing and gaining momentum in their own lives. So I really appreciate you for doing that and taking these routes. I still think, like, what happens if you registered for Triton? That's just such a pivotal moment.
I have no idea. Like, I think about that a lot. Like, what would have happened if I would have registered for Triton, or even if I was still working at my 9-to-5 job? Like,
right.
What would have happened if those things? What if my old co-host was still here? What if? Those what ifs are crazy. But I'm just so happy to be in the place that I'm at right now.
Got it. We're going to put your connects in in the show notes. But where do people find you generally, and the podcast, and now the skit possibly?
Coming soon. You can find me everywhere at Malcolm Crawford _ MALCOLM Crawford _ You can find me everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere there. And then the podcast is the Storm Podcast, THA Storm Podcast. We're everywhere under that. And yeah, come check us out. We have a lot of fun over there. You guys will definitely enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much again, Malcolm, for coming back. Again, if you are listening to this, take a look at the show notes. I will connect our first conversation.
I'm going to go listen to that.
In-house. And we were actually at Oak Park and River Forest High School in the new entrepreneurship room that they just built over there. Amazing conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your journey, man.
For sure. Thank you for having me on. I will be back whenever you guys want me to be.
100%. For Alli, Privitt, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thank you all for hanging out with us here on the Disrupt Education Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrawser or Alli Privitt.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.